Nope. State, Utah. Utah has the highest usage of porn by 11%. The second highest state in the nation is Mississippi. Okay? Yeah. Mississippi and Utah have the highest porn use. How do we know? That's where all the searches are coming from for sex on Google. It's really easy to find this stuff anymore. Now, as early as 1999, other research showed the sales. This is back when the internet really got going rapidly. The sales of porn, it's the actual hard copy, not hardcore, hard copy with a magazine, you know, something holding it. Sales of internet of hard paper-bound copies was the highest sale was in Utah. So Utah continues to use porn more than any other state. It's also among the most religious states in the nation. So we can see, I kind of got off track there, sorry about that. We can see the women like erotic novels and videos with a plot in our group. And males, what do males like? Well, they like short videos. You know, 5 minutes is all it takes. Because, quite frankly, the thing that nobody talks about is porn is used for masturbation. Period. That's 99% of why people look at porn is to get themselves sexually excited. And that's the way humans are. You watch a video of chimpanzees or bonobos, and they actually watch each other having sex in the wild. So our brains are wired to watch people having sex. It seems to entertain us. It seems to stimulate us. It's not a new behavior in terms of humans. It goes back millions and millions of years. So short vids, that's what a lot of men like. They like pictures, of course. Now, where's the erotic novels? Oh, clear down here. You know, they really don't care for that. So we got to get a switch between the men and the women. And I'm sure if we could get the Baptists to answer the survey. Amanda and I have figured out how to get Baptists and Catholics to answer the survey. I'm betting this wouldn't change with them, probably. They're using it, they just won't admit it. Now, is there a difference in the beginning of porn use by religiosity? In other words, if you're highly religious, if you're raised really religious, do you use porn less than those who were not raised highly religious? Now remember, the people who evaluated their homes as an 8, 9, or a 10, those people were darn religious when they were 15, 16 years old. They had no idea they were probably going to become an atheist at the age of 25 or 50. They're not predicting their own future. So we can say that this is pretty reliable information, and it's being compared against people who are saying their homes were a 1, 2, or 3. So here's what we found. We found the least and most religious. You just glance at this chart, and you can say there's hardly any difference. Whether you were raised very religious or very non-religious, you start to use porn about the same time. I know this from my own experience. I was raised in a very fundamentalist home, and the neighbors and my dad all had porn, and we all knew how to find our dad's and our neighbors' porn. When we're all sneaking around and pulling it out and looking at it. I'm 13, 14, 15 years old. The most religious people in our church, the most religious elders that I had access to their homes, through their kids and stuff, we all knew where the porn was. It was almost 100%. But they would preach sermons against porn, they would teach Sunday school classes against it, even as they are using it themselves. So you can see, there is a slight difference, but they catch up. At this point in time, we see the most religious are beating us out. They're catching up. You know, they're using porn as much more than we are. There's no doubt they start a little bit later, but there's no difference by age 21 between the two, or no significant statistical differences. So Amanda and I were just blown away by the thousands of comments and hundreds of pages of people gave us their life story. We did not realize when we put this survey up just how much people wanted to tell us their story. So we got thousands of comments, hundreds and hundreds of pages. We haven't had time to analyze it all yet. But I want to show you some of the comments. Some of these stories were just heartbreaking. Some of them were hilarious, but, you know, like one kid, we asked questions about, you know, were you ever berated for using pornography? And one kid said, well, yeah, my mom got on me for putting it on her computer and told me to get it off the computer and put it on my own thumb drive. We got several of those. Or another comment said, yeah, my dad really got upset at me when I filched his Penthouse magazines But that was the only consequence, and he kept looking at him. Obviously, those are from the less religious and hung up homes. But here's some of the things that people told us after they got out of religion. I stopped feeling guilty about having sex outside of marriage, and I owned and explored my sexuality, which is something I had never felt comfortable doing when I was religious. Or here's another one. I have learned more about my own body and am more open to different sexualities portrayed by different people. Also, I'm open to sexual exploration while in a relationship. Another, I'm not afraid to have sex now. I don't feel guilty about masturbating, and I don't feel bad anymore about having sucked my friend's cock. On a side note, I would like to mention he was the preacher's son in the church I was attending. We got a lot of that. We got a lot of the Sunday school teacher and stuff. This one was probably one of the more heartbreaking ones, because this is downright dangerous. There was a large space of time between becoming sexually active and becoming non-religious. During that time, I put myself at unnecessary risk of disease and pregnancy. While I was religious, guilt kept me from taking basic precautions like birth control and condom use. To me, using any sort of contraceptive was tantamount to admitting that I was planning for and indeed desirous of sexual activities. Deciding not to use contraception allowed me to convince myself that my pleasure was a side effect of fulfilling my boyfriend's desire for sexual activity. I suggest that this is a very common behavior among the most religious, because we know from all the research they are having sex, but they're feeling guilty as hell after they do it. So within our sample, there's a lot of evidence that I haven't even couldn't even begin to tell you today in our thing. But I do want to give you a little bit of some of the things you can do, some of the conclusions. Now, I want to be careful here, because I don't want you to go off here and say, Darrel made all these gigantic conclusions. The evidence that we have suggests certain directions, certain things about human beings that once they leave religion. We're still analyzing the data. I don't think our conclusions will change any, because the data is just so strong. But there is room for wiggle here. And read our report and digest it yourself. And there's, of course, we know there's room for criticism. No survey, no research is perfect. But we think this is worth starting a dialogue about. One of the things we found is one of the best things you can do, at least according to our research, our study only, was the best thing you can do for your sex life is leave religion. Your sex life will improve, or your satisfaction around sex will improve. And there's some distinction you can make. Don't marry a religious person in the first place. Our survey, and I didn't show you any graphs on this, but our survey shows the more religious, if you're a secularist, the more religious your spouse is, the less satisfied you are with your sex life. And it's almost linear. The more religious your spouse is, the less satisfied you are. The less religious your spouse is, if you are an atheist married to a Unitarian, you are probably having great sex every night. But if you're married to a Baptist or a Mormon, forget it. You're getting it once a year whether you like it or not. So, Episcopalians and Unitarians are good people to marry. They're kind of Christianity light, aren't they? Spouse's religiosity, if you would rate your spouse as an 8, 9, or a 10, you have a 76% chance of being very dissatisfied with your sex life. So that's what we did. We asked people, how religious is your spouse? And what we found is if they're rating their spouse that high, their own sexual satisfaction is pretty low. The more religious your spouse, well, I've already said it. So, but there is some intervening variables that we need to consider. Religion isn't the only variable here, and that's why I want to be cautious in this interpretation. People do have a tendency to more conservatism just in their personality, or more liberalism in their personality. We know that. Personality research shows that. So we may not just be seeing the impact of religion, we may be seeing the impact of a certain personality style too. And Amanda and I did not look at that component of it. So I want to say there may be a third variable here that we did not test for. So that's why this is a correlation, and we can't say for sure that it's causation. Correlation is not causation. You guys know that term, right? All right. Well, I want to be as clear as possible here. Don't want anybody going out here and saying, well, Darrel says that this is always because of that, because I'm not saying that. There seems to be an inverse relationship between the sexual satisfaction and spouse's religiosity. Sexual guilt does little to change behavior. Our research shows there is almost no change in behavior based on religiosity. You can be as religious as you want, you're still going to go out and screw people at 15 years, 16 or 17. You're still going to start masturbating at 12 or 13, and you're going to, the only difference is you are going to feel guilty as hell about it if you're a Baptist, and if you're a non-religious person, you're going to have much, much less guilt. But you're both going to be doing it just as much. Because biology happens. Biology happens. The hormones are rushing through your blood. You have very little real control over that. So, whether you're a bonobo ape, a chimpanzee, a human being, a gorilla, a orangutan, we all have very strong sexual tendencies. And biology happens. So, we think that, learn to accept yourself as a sexual being. Talk openly with your partner. We found that sexual satisfaction was pretty strong among people who said they could communicate with their partner. Assert your right to explore and be who you are as a sexual being. If you're related to a religious person who thinks oral sex is wrong and sinful and you're going to hell, then they're probably going to try and put that guilt trip on you. Do you have a right to explore your own sexuality? And if you're married to that person, you better renegotiate the relationship and think about it, because is your happiness, what's going to happen to you and your own happiness? Are you going to end up getting divorced? Or maybe there's opportunity to talk that you've not taken. You just assumed that they were uptight about it, or they made a comment 10 years ago and you've never opened the subject again. So try doing more negotiation with your partner, and perhaps you can make some headway. People do change and see new ways of being as they grow older. Recognize that religion is designed to create guilt about normal and natural things. You may still be guilty. You may be a raving atheist, but still be guilty about something you were taught when you were a kid. I have a very good atheist friend, known for quite a few years. He says there's still things about sex I really have to work hard to not avoid, because my partner loves them, but it turns me off. And it's turned me off because my Methodist mother told me it was wrong. So, sex is religion's weak spot. I think we talk about debating religionists all the time, but I found something interesting. Religionists cannot talk about sex. They will debate whether God exists all day long. But you ask them anything about this, for example, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's the weak spot. And I think we should follow the gay community. Have you ever noticed that gays are about as open about their sexuality? Do you notice just how open a lot of gay people are? Well, why can't we be like that? What's wrong with being There you go. What's wrong with hetero people being just as open about their sexuality? I am in awe and admiration of the gay community. They've not only come out and said, we are here, you can't ignore us anymore, but we're going to act like we want to act. You can't tell us, because I'm gay, I don't have the right to act the way I want to act, walk the way I want to walk, hug and kiss the person I want to hug and kiss. That is their right, their privilege, their right in this culture and in this United States. And I think we have the same right. Let's stop hiding our sexuality. And I see lots of atheists acting like they're still Christians when it comes to, I dare not mention that in public. Well, our gay friends mention it in public, and they're still surviving, and they're doing quite well. All right. So take the lesson from them. Read Dan Savage, or listen to Dan Savage. If you haven't listened to Savage podcast, awesome podcast. Greta Christina, awesome. I heard her speak 2 weeks ago at American Atheist Convention. She brought the house down. She is lesbian. She's a great blogger. She's very open about her sexuality, and I love that. I think that is so liberating for people to get over the hang-ups that they learned from their religion. Talk publicly about sex, of course, within reason. I'm not, there's certain words and things you probably shouldn't be using in public. But, whether you're a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, and yes, Buddhists are pretty uptight about sex. Don't let anybody tell you different, especially the ones that aren't in California.